Hello, class. This lecture is going to talk about or cover managing anxiety, facing your fear of public speaking. So, a popular belief is that public speaking is America's #1 fear, that Americans fear public speaking even more than death. And I don't know if that's really true. I think it's probably more of an urban legend. But it is true that many people do have stage fright. They do experience anxiety and feel very nervous at the thought of giving a speech. And no doubt some of you in this class are in that boat right now. So hopefully some of the things that I share with you in this lecture will help you feel a little more relaxed when you think about giving your first speech, your first big speech in class. Most of you have already done an introduction speech by now. So of course the poster child in this case for anxiety, I put up a picture of course, Crazy Eyes or Suzanne from Orange is the New Black. And hopefully nobody feels as panic-stricken as Suzanne often feels on that episode or on that TV show. So let's talk about some common reasons that students give for anxiety. They say, "I'll look stupid. I don't want to get up in front of the class and look stupid." Or if we're doing it by internet, I don't want to be, on the camera. I don't want to be on the screen looking stupid. Well, newsflash, if you look stupid, you look stupid, whether you get in front of class or not, right? No, you're not going to look stupid, okay? The only way you will look stupid is if you act stupidly, if you are foolish and you don't prepare, you don't do your homework, you don't put together a good speech outline and speaking notes and rehearse it. And, in that case, then you might get up and look stupid because, you've been stupid by not preparing. But if you prepare, you do your homework, you have an outline, make your speaking notes, rehearse it a few times before you give your speech, you're not going to look stupid. My voice will crack. Another one on here says, my voice sounds funny. Well, okay, things about your voice. A lot of people don't like the sound of their voice on video or audio. When you may remember when you were young and somebody recorded you and played it back and you heard yourself for the first time and you're like, turn it off, turn it off. I don't sound like that or whatever, unless you're a narcissist, like a certain president we all know, who might think, well, I have the very best voice in the history of the world. No man's ever had a better voice than I have. But unless you're just a narcissist and really stuck on yourself, you've probably thought at times your voice, sounds funny or weird, but it's just different. It's unique, right? And that's good. Imagine how boring it would be if we had to listen to about 100 speeches in this class. We got 25 or so students, and each of you are giving at least 4, maybe 5 speeches, so 125 speeches. And if everybody sounded the same, if you spoke with the same kind of cadence, tone of voice, how boring would that be? So the variety of our voices, it's good. Accents, different dialects, right? Some people who maybe English is a second language even. I mean, as long as you can communicate clearly, focus on articulation and enunciation, but the different sounds that our voices have, right? That's a good thing. There's no problem with that. Although, there is research out there that people with certain tone of voice who speak with a certain tone and force are taken more seriously. And so if you were going to go into a life, for example, of politics, or of where you need to give persuasive speeches a lot, then yeah, some vocal coaching to teach you to speak louder, to project your voice stronger. Maybe if you have more of a high-pitched voice, to speak a little deeper, because studies show that people consider a deeper voice and a stronger voice to be more authoritative and credible. And there's a movie, it's just come to my mind. I think it's called Thunder Horse or something like that. But it's about Margaret Thatcher, who was a longtime prime minister of Great Britain. And that was one of the early things that she was told when she wanted to enter politics, was that people wouldn't take her seriously because of how she talked. And she did vocal training to learn how to speak with more authority as a woman, to command Parliament. And it worked well for her, right? Because she became prime minister. People will stare at me. Well, you don't have that big of an issue in this term because we're online, right? And you're looking at a camera. But we're preparing you for public speaking in front of a live audience. So I'm going to go ahead and cover these points. If you're worried about people staring at you, first, change your talk. Change how you frame things, your self-talk. Instead of thinking about people staring at you, you could consider it, oh, people are paying attention. People really care about what I'm talking about. These folks are really interested. You see, take it off of yourself and the egocentric, they're staring at me. And instead see them as they're listening. They're paying attention. They care about the topic. That can help you feel a little less anxious when you don't reinforce those things by the way you talk. But if you have issues with making eye contact, looking up at an audience, of course, one of the tricks is if you're in a large auditorium and on a stage, then you pick out an object on a wall that's like behind the audience, right above their heads. Maybe it's an exit sign or a clock, a fire extinguisher, anything that's on the wall, right? And that, that can work. That can be effective as you're a novice speaker and you're just wanting to focus on looking up and not looking down at your notes. And that works in a larger venue. Like if you're looking over the heads of the first few rows, well, they just think you're looking back at the rest of the audience back there. But in a small room, people know, like if you're staring at the fire alarm on the back of the wall, on the wall on the back of the room, they know that. So you can't always just like look over the heads of people in a smaller venue. So you need to learn how to be able to make some eye contact and be able to manage your nerves of having people focusing their attention on you and what you're saying. One of the ways to do that is obviously to rehearse and to practice. And one of the things you can do is practice in your room. And if you're at home, and maybe your mom has stowed in the attic or up in a closet some of your old stuffed animals or dolls, action figures, things like that. Get those and set them up. Set them up around the room and on your bed. And as you give your speech, just look at the stuffed animals that have eyes, and look at the dolls or the action figures or whatever they are that you have set up. And yeah, it's a little weird. It's unnatural, but at the same time, your brain, the psychology of it is you're being conditioned to seeing a pair of eyes looking back at you as you're talking. You can also do the same with, like, if you don't have any kinds of toy animals or action figures or dolls to work with, you can use portraits or posters. family, pictures of people, old school pictures. If you got some old like 8x10 size pictures of portrait style pictures where people are looking bright and smiling, just set those up, or posters that have human, figures on them, human faces, and just focus on looking at those pictures and those posters and seeing representation, right, of human faces and eyes looking at you while you're talking. And these are strategies, baby steps toward being more comfortable in a live audience. I will space out. I'll forget what I'm going to say. I'll have a brain fart. Well, let me tell you something. That will happen. It happens to me all the time. In class, when I'm lecturing, when I give speeches, it's like I get going sometimes so fast that my mouth gets ahead of my brain, or my brain is thinking of something else and is ahead of my mouth. And I just I get it mixed up, and I have to stop and regain my train of thought. Wait, what was I saying? Where was I going with this? And I'll just say that out loud, right? And I don't try to fake it. That's the problem, is when you try to hide it from the audience, right? And then all of a sudden that second of a pause turns into 3 seconds, and it's starting to feel like an eternity to you. And you're like, oh my God, I look so stupid up here, and all that self-talk and all of that, all those negative thoughts start bombarding you, and it just compounds your anxiety. But if you just embrace it, right, it's natural. It's normal to kind of, when you're talking fast or for an extended period of time, that you lose your train of thought, that you have to kind of pause for a second and regain your thought process. The word, sometimes there's a word that you're wanting to say and it's on the tip of your tongue, but you just can't remember what it is, or it's just natural. It's a part of normal communication, right? So don't take yourself so seriously. And when it happens, just play it off. Oh man, what's that word I'm looking for? I guarantee you somebody in the audience is paying attention and is anticipating the word that you're going to say, and they're going to shout it out to you, and you're going to say, yes, that's it, thank you, right? And everybody has a little laugh. And what does that do? This boosts your ethos, at least with most people, right? Because they're going to relate to you better, right? You're human. They can identify with that. They can feel empathy or sorry for you. Like, oh God, I would hate if that was me up there and I forgot what I was going to say. But then they admire you, right? And so it turns out to be a positive thing. I can't tell you how many times I've been given a speech and I had lost my train of thought or whatever, and I say, what was I going to say? What has that ever happened to y'all? Or what did I just say? I can't, where was I going? has that ever happened to y'all? Just, it's gone. And somebody who's been paying attention will say, well, you just said this, that, or the other. And you're like, oh yeah. Thank you. Okay, now I remember. And you go on. I may have told y'all this already. I don't remember, but when I was in graduate school studying for my doctorate, my PhD in communication, early on, a very well-known and popular public speaker at the time was Joel Osteen, who is a pastor at Lakewood Church in Houston, the largest church in the U.S., and he's on hundreds of TV channels every Saturday, Sunday, all the time, has sold millions and millions of books, and he's one of the most popular motivational speakers, inspirational speakers out there today. I mean, Joel Osteen, before the COVID pandemic anyway, he traveled the country like a rock star, selling out arenas. We're talking like football stadiums, like Nissan Stadium in downtown Nashville. And you got to buy a ticket to go hear Joel Osteen speak, right? Yeah, he's a preacher, but you're going to pay for a ticket to go hear him speak. So, I mean, he's making money hand over fist as a public speaker. Well, I went down to Houston because I was doing a study of his, you know, his rhetoric, his style, and what was the appeal of Joel Osteen. And I attended the services at Lakewood Church, and I sat down on the front, well, probably third or fourth row back, right down by the front, not 20 feet away from the stage. And it's in this huge arena, right, in downtown Houston. I forget what the center was called. I can't remember, but it's where the Houston Rockets NBA basketball team used to play. And so they converted it into a church. And he's up there giving his speech, his sermon. And I don't know if you've ever seen him on TV, but his style is he comes up and he's got a podium there, and he sets down his Bible and he sets down his speaking notes. And then he walks from side to side on the stage. And as he passes by, he'll look down at the podium, the lectern there, and glance at his notes, turn the page if he needs to, and then he walks out to the other side of the stage, and he works that side of the audience. And they call him the smiling preacher because he's always smiling like this as he talks, and he does this gesture a lot. Oh, you know. Oh, you got to think positive and be happy and believe, because good things are coming and you're going to get a job. And, you know, and he's out there doing all of his stuff. And he goes side to side, passing by the podium, looking at his notes. And that's how he gives his speeches every time. Well, he was doing this, and I would say he was about, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes into his speech. That would have been about 20 minutes or so, 20 to 30 minutes. So, I mean, he was about a quarter of the way into his speech. And he walked over to the stage left, and he's standing there. And I'm watching him, right? I'm taking notes because I'm doing this as a research assignment, right? I'm writing a paper and doing research on Joel Osteen. So I'm watching everything, and I'm doing it critically. I'm analyzing everything, right? And so I'm watching him closely. And the second it happens, I'm like, he just forgot what he was going to say. I could tell he had that look, that deer in the headlights look for a split second. And I'm like, oh, this is Rich. What's he going to do? Because he's 10, 15 feet away from where his speaking notes are. And he's out there like this. And so he's been speaking. So I'm just going to kind of like hum a melody as if I'm Joel Osteen giving my speech. And this is how it went. He goes like, do 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 do. I mean, the music just stopped, and he had forgotten what he was going to say. And after maybe like 2 or 3 seconds at the most, he just put his hands on his hips and he stomped his foot, and he said, "What was I going to say, y'all? I don't know, but it sure was going to be good." Now, he talks like that. If you haven't heard him, he's from East Texas, and he talks with that twang, and it's just part of his Southern charm that just gets people to love him so much. But there he was, this guy who speaks to the largest church in America every week, 3 or 4 times, making millions of dollars, and he forgot what he was going to say. Right in the middle of the speech, he just blanked out. And all he did, what was I going to say, y'all? I don't know, but it sure was going to be good. And then he walked over to the podium, and he looked at his notes, and he's like, "Oh, yeah, okay, yeah." And then he carried on. Everybody had a laugh. And they're like, "Oh, that Joe, I love him so much. I could just eat him up." Not once, but twice in that speech, Joel Osteen just totally lost his train of thought. It's okay. Everybody does it. That's the point. I will start sweating. Okay, that can be embarrassing, and nobody, wants to be all sweaty up in front of the audience. Well, first of all, a lot of people aren't going to know that you're sweating, right? They're not ever going to see that, but you feel it and you know it. maybe your armpits or down your back. You feel the sweat running, and now you're nervous. Oh my God, is it going to show? So a couple of things about that. Number one, watch your diet and what you consume for 24 hours before giving a big speech, because some foods, especially those high in sodium, salt, will promote more sweating, right? Sometimes medications as a side effect cause increased sweating. And you might not be able to stop your medication, but what you can do is you can get garment liners, right? They make absorbent pads with adhesive strips on them that will go inside your arm to collect sweat that comes under your arms. You can put them on the small of your back. I mean, there have been times when for whatever reason, whether I was anxious or it was hot or whatever, that I was sweating a lot before a speech, that I would go into a bathroom and I would get paper towel and just kind of create me a little pad of paper towel and put it in the small of my back with my shirt tucked into my pants just to collect sweat. So you can manage that. That's not a big deal. All right, my hands will shake. Well, if you're holding your note cards up here like this while you're talking, we'll see that, but you're not going to do that. And most people aren't going to see if your hands are shaking a little bit. People will disagree with me. Oh, well, I hope so. I hope you talk about something that there are differing opinions about, and that you can try to persuade us, right? Your goal is not necessarily to get people to agree with you. Your goal is to get your message across, that people understand what you meant for them to understand. People will laugh at me. Okay, if you tell a funny joke, I hope they do. But the concern here is that, I think when students tell me that's what they're afraid of, what they mean is they're afraid students might mock at them, might mock them, might make fun of them. And all I can tell you is that's not going to happen in class. If it does, I deal with it. All right. And, I've been teaching public speaking classes for over a decade now at the college level. And there've only been 2 students I've ever had to kick out of class because, they thought it would be cool to mock a student who was up in front of the class. Typically, people aren't that terrible. They don't suck that bad at being human. They're not going to make fun of you, okay? And if they do, they'll have me to deal with, but it's not going to happen. All right? Out there in the real world, out in an open, public space, people might, sneer or jeer at you, and you'll just have to learn how to deal with that at that time, and just learn how to keep going and not let them get under your skin. But it's not going to happen in this class. I'll get dry mouth, possibly, and so have a bottle of water. Okay, that's fine. If you need, to have a cup or a bottle of water at your side and take a sip in the middle of a speech, that's not a big deal. Just try to do it in a way that it doesn't really break the flow. Try to wait for a moment where there would be a pause, a natural pause in the speech where you're transitioning from one point to the next or something like that, if it's possible. But if your throat gets dry and it's cracking, or you're feeling a tickle in your throat and you're having to cough a little bit, just say, excuse me, pardon me, and get you a drink and then carry on. That's fine. All right. Ultimately, what we have to do is control our fear, and that means ultimately we have to face it and do the thing that we fear. And so the picture on this PowerPoint slide is a fear that I had to face, literally. This is, I don't know what they call it, the Tower of Terror or something like that, at King's Dominion in Northern Virginia. And several years back, when my kids were small, we took them there. And I'm not into big thrill rides. I don't care about roller coasters. high adrenaline, dangerous, fast kind of stuff. I'm just, it's just not my thing. It's not that I'm, scared of doing it or whatever, or afraid. I'm not afraid of heights or anything like that. It's just, really what it boils down to is an issue of trust. I don't know that I trust that tower has been adequately inspected. How do I know that all the bolts have been tightened and nothing's rusted out and about to break? And, it's an issue of trust, because I know what's really driving that is the profit motive, people wanting to make money. And sometimes greed compromises safety. So that's more what it is for me. And, the last thing in the world I want to do at King's Dominion is get on that thing. And I'm not concerned that would even be the case, that I would have to, because my oldest child at the time was probably 8 or 9. And he was already, my son Ryan was already having to be in a wheelchair because of muscular dystrophy. And so he can't, because of his weakened condition and his lack of muscle strength, he can't ride rides like that because he can't hold on. He can't brace himself. So I know I'm not going to have to ride any roller coasters or, things like this, because my son can't ride them. And my middle child, she's a big fraidy cat. She wouldn't get on something like that. And that leaves only my youngest, who at the time was probably 4 or 5. And, she's 4 or 5 years old. I mean, she can't ride something like that, right? She's not big enough. So I'm thinking, I got it made in the shade. Well, we spend the day there, and as we're leaving, I'm pushing my son in his manual wheelchair. And as we pass where this ride is, what do you call it? Ride, this Tower of Terror, my little, 4 or 5-year-old daughter, Malia, just runs, makes a beeline, and gets in line for this ride. And I'm like white knuckling my son's manual wheelchair. I'm like, I got a death grip on that thing. And so I look at her mother and I say, go get your daughter. And she's like, I'm not doing that. I'm like, that's one of the reasons why I divorced her. I did divorce her, but that was later. But anyway, she goes and gets in line. And I'm like, I've got this conflict of conscience, right? I got the angel on one side and I got the devil on the other side. And I'm looking at my daughter, who's probably 50 feet away from us at this point, and we're starting to move that direction. And the angel's like, you need to go and get your daughter, and you can't let her ride that thing by herself. And the devil's like, she didn't ask you, she didn't get your permission. And what kind of father would you be? What if something happened? Well, it serves her right. She, you don't want to ride that thing. She hasn't got permission. She's not old enough anyway. On and on. So I had this war of conscience, and so I'm thinking, okay, I'm gonna get in line with her, and we're gonna get up there, and there's gonna be that little bar that says you got to be this tall to ride this ride, and she's not, she won't be able to, and get out of line. Well, I'll be dead gum. We get up there, and because she's wearing a ponytail, that's kind of got a little lift to it. I mean, she just barely touches that line. And I'm like, crap, I'm going to have to get on this thing. And I did not, I'm telling you, I did not want to do it one bit. And sure enough, I mean, I'm trying to talk her out of it. I mean, I'm using my best, skills of persuasion to try to talk her out of it. I'm offering her the moon. Let's go get some ice cream. Let's get some candy. No, I mean, she wanted to ride that ride. So I can't dissuade her. And she's just all grinning ear to ear as she sits there and gets strapped into the harness. And I sit by her. I'm like, well, if my daughter's going to die today, I'll die with her. And here you go. I mean, you see where the people are way up there in that ring, and man, and it takes forever to get up there. You're just slowly going up, and your feet are dangling. And I mean, it's like, I don't know how tall that thing is. It's like 1,000 feet high or something like that. I mean, it's a skyscraper. It's very high, like over 10 stories high. And yeah, not 1,000, hundreds of feet anyway. I mean, you see how it towers over that tall roller coaster. And the music's playing as you go up, and you get up there, and it finally stops, and the music's still playing, and then all of a sudden the music stops, and you're like, oh God, you know, they're playing with you, they're toying with you. Psychological, you know, torture's what it is. And then all of a sudden, they just, like, you hear the snap, the release, and that ring of seats just go straight down. And I mean, I'm swallowing, I'm trying to keep all my guts and stuff from coming up. And I'm like, ah! Man. And we got down, got off. I was probably white as a sheet. And guess what we did? You know, we went and kind of and grabbed a hold of the kid's mother and my daughter, other daughter, and there was somebody there who stayed with our son, and we wrote it again. You know, because I wrote it and survived and lived to tell about it, and I realized, you know, it wasn't something to be so afraid of after all. It's like the second time it wasn't any big deal. And that's how it'll be with you with public speaking, right? Each time you get up and you're successful, right? You give that speech and you grow from it. And each time you're going to gain in confidence and in effectiveness. But this right here, right? This is my biggest fear in the world. It's irrational. I know all the statistics, and I'm more likely to die, you know, 7 times from a lightning strike before I would be attacked by a shark. But I'm deathly afraid of sharks. Like, I was a small kid when Jaws came out, right? We didn't go into the swimming pools that summer, right? I mean, I'm deathly afraid of sharks. I really am. I don't like swimming in the ocean. I mean, I will wade in it some, but you know, I don't like it, right? Because there are things that can eat me in there. I mean, I love to swim. I grew up on the Caddo River. I was part fish. Man, I swam 2 or 3 times a day, every day in the summer in the Caddo River. But there weren't any fish that would look at me as potential prey, and that could, you know, bite me in half or swallow me whole. So, I'll tell you this story real quick. I don't know how quick it'll be, but I'm gonna tell you this story anyway, because it illustrates a few points here. So maybe it was because I grew up in a landlocked state of Arkansas and never saw the ocean or Gulf or anything like that until, gosh, I was 21 years old. I was 21 the first time I ever left the state of Arkansas. And that was on a trip I took with my student club at a service club at the university. And it was on our fall break, and we went down to Miami, Florida to help out with the cleanup in the wake of Hurricane Andrew that had just devastated southern Florida. So there were about a dozen of us guys who packed into a 15-passenger van with our suitcases and all. I mean, we were like sardines in there, and we drove like 20 hours to Miami from Arkansas, and to help out with the cleanup and whatnot. And there was a particular church down there that was kind of like the headquarters for the volunteers that were arriving from different places. And from there, we went out into the community in different areas, you know, ripped up carpet and knocked out drywall and hauled off furniture and all those kinds of things that you have to do after massive flooding from a hurricane. And that was the first time I saw the ocean. Now, I wasn't too worried about it because I knew, like, I wasn't going swimming. I didn't have to get in the water, but I saw it for the first time. Well, we were there for about a week doing the cleanup and all, and helping out. And then it was time, you know, we finished working what we were going to do with the organization. And so it was time to come back home. But a few people were like, oh no, let's go down to Key West before we go and go back. And I'm just like thinking, oh God, no, you know, I'm ready to get back to Arkansas. I mean, this was my first trip into the wide, wide world, and it was to Miami, Florida. And I mean, I saw things I'd never even seen on TV. I mean, I saw real live hookers on the street corners with the fishnet stockings and all of that stuff, and homeless people coming up and banging on our van as we were driving downtown Miami. And, you know, this was like 1992. And I saw like two gay men in Speedos walking hand in hand on the Miami beach. And at that time, like I was just like, oh my God, get me out of here. I was homophobic. I was afraid of getting AIDS just by stepping on a needle or something on the beach. You know, this is 1992, y'all. I'm just saying where I was at that time. It was crazy, right? I wanted to get back to Arkansas. Well, I didn't win. So we headed another 4 or 5 hours south down to Key West, and we stayed there for a day. And then as we're coming back, some of the guys were like, you know, let's go to a beach somewhere and go swimming. And I'm like, oh God, no, you know, no, I don't want to go swimming in the ocean. But again, I got outvoted, and of course I got my poker face on, because the only thing worse than me having to, you know, like get in the ocean, right? The only thing to be is all of my friends there, all these other guys, knowing that I was a fraidy cat, right? That I was scared to get in the ocean. I mean, can you imagine driving 24 hours in a van with 11 other guys picking at you because you're a fraidy cat the whole way home? Oh my God, it would have been terrible, been brutal. So I gotta do it, and I can't let on that I'm scared. So we all go to like a Walmart or something like that, and, you know, buy a swimming suit, buy us a pair of goggles and snorkel, and here we go. And as we're driving along, they noticed like this roadside park, state park area that had a beach, and we pull off into it. And as we're coming down to the level of the beach, I can see that there's like a roped off or netted off area for swimming. And I can see floating out there like a cement floating dock, like a platform. And it looked much like, you know, what I would see at some of the lakes in Arkansas, where they have these swimming areas and these docks and that you can go and jump off of and swim around and stuff. And I'm thinking, okay, that's not quite so bad. I mean, it looks like it's netted off. Okay. But then here's the skeptic side of me. It's like, I don't trust that net. How I know there aren't any holes in that net? What, I bet that net doesn't go all the way down to the floor. I mean, something could still be in there. Well, we get to the beach. We all get out. And of course, everybody wants to swim out to that concrete platform that's floating out there. And I'm going to guess that thing was at least 100 feet, maybe even 200 feet. Not quite a football field, probably a couple of 100 feet. And they wanted to swim out there to it. And I'm like, crap, you know, that's what we're going to do. And so we're going out there as a group. So here I am. I'm kind of like trying to strategically position myself in the middle of the group, because I'm not going to be out on the edge where I can get picked off, right? I'm going to be in the middle. And so here we go. We all walk in there, and I'm just like, yeah, you know, this ain't nothing but a thing. You know, I'm trying to fake and mask my fear and act like I'm excited and having fun. And so we swim. You know, we get in the water and we're swimming, and we swim, and we finally get out there to that platform. And I mean, I never looked down the whole time. I didn't even have my head in the water. I'm just like trying to get there and get back up on top of that and get out of that water. And, you know, you get there and put my hands up on that platform, and my feet dropped under me, and I just kind of got the heebie-jeebies, and my hair stands up because my feet are dangling down there. Jump up as fast as I can, and then I'm just like sitting there hugging my knees, you know, on the platform. And the all-consuming thought in my mind is, I got to get back. I got to jump in that water again and swim back to the beach. And I'm trying to just like not hyperventilate and keep calm and just build up my courage to be able to jump in there again and swim. Now, other people are sitting there, they got their feet dangling in the water. Ain't no way I'm doing that. People are jumping in and swimming under and around. I'm just like, no, I'm just going to sit right here until I have to jump in that water. Now, this is my first experience at the ocean, y'all. Keep that in mind. And it's right after a major hurricane has happened. Like the hurricane was just like maybe 10 days earlier, within the past 2 weeks. And so the water is all murky. I mean, it's been churned up by the hurricane, right? And the waves and all the undercurrents. And you know, I mean, it's nasty. I mean, the water's just full of algae, floating particles, and I mean, it's very murky water. And I've grown up watching enough, you know, Shark Week type programs to know that although they're rare, most shark attacks happen in murky water. And they happen typically within a half hour of sun up or sundown. Well, guess what? The sun's getting low on the horizon here. I got murky water. I got the sun going down, and I probably smell like chicken right now. It would taste like chicken to a shark. So man, it's like the holy trifecta of I'm gonna get eaten by a shark here. I got to get back on the ground. So I try to start dropping some hints, right? I got to be cool about it, right? I ain't no way I'm jumping in there and swimming back by myself, okay? And it's clear that we're not going to go back as a group because people are doing their own things. So I'm like, man, I think before it gets dark, I'm gonna go check out some of those trails or things that were up there. Now I think I want to get a Coke or something. And nobody was taking me up on it. I'm just like, damn. Finally, you know, I'm speaking to be overheard here, and one of my buddies, his name was Ricky, he heard me. He said, man, yeah, I think I'm ready to go back. I'll go with you. I was like, all right, let's go. So here we are. Now you got to picture this. I can't be as demonstrative as I would be if I was in the classroom with you, but we're standing up on the edge of that platform, right? It's just a concrete rectangle floating out there. And I'm on the very edge of it. My toes are curled there, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm gonna squat down and I'm gonna jump as far as I can jump into that water, try to minimize my time splashing in the water, right? So I wanna jump as far into the water as I can to get a good head start to get on terra firma. And so Ricky's to my right standing up, and I'm here, and we like, okay, let's go. And we're going down. I'm literally in the motion of going down to spring up to jump. And as I'm going down at about my, what is that, 10 o'clock position, maybe 50 feet out there, was the biggest splash I think I'd ever seen on top of the water. And I mean, I was going down, and it's like, oh, whoa, oh God, no, you know, and I'm back. I'm like, whoa, what was that? And then it registered what I had seen. It was a giant stingray. I don't know if y'all have ever seen them do this. I have many times since, but they'll come up and just whoops and flap the top of the water like that. Now, here I am. Now I am totally petrified. I'm like, are you kidding me? There's a giant I mean, he's on the inside of the netted off area. He's in there with me where I got to swim. And I'm thinking, if a giant stingray can be in here, anything can be in here. Stingrays are in the shark family, for Christ's sake. Whew. So what did I do? I jumped in. I jumped in and I swam. I swam. And I was doing fine until about halfway back to the beach. About halfway, I do not know what possessed me to do it, but I had on my goggles and I looked down. I looked down. Why did I do that? I mean, I was like Shrek in the movie. What is it? The first, I think it's the first Shrek, isn't it? Where he and Donkey are going and got to rescue Princess Fiona from the tower with the fiery dragon, and they got to cross this rickety bridge, and Donkey's afraid to do it, so Shrek just tells him, "Don't look down," right? And so the donkey, he's going across, he's like, "Don't look down, don't look down, don't look down," and all of a sudden, Shrek, I'm looking down. Well, there I was looking down, and what I saw was literally the bottom of the ocean disappear. So like we were swimming, and I would say the water was probably like 15 to 20 feet deep. It was real murky, but you could see the bottom still. And then all of a sudden, as we're on top of the water in this 15 to 20 foot of water, it's like there's an underwater cliff, and it just fell off, and it was just pitch black. And I was just like, oh God, you know? And man, I was never so happy to get back on the ground and get back to Arkansas eventually. But let me tell you something. Since then, like, I have been snorkeling in Hawaii twice, and I have done a lot of swimming and snorkeling all around the island of Tobago and Barbados when I lived in the Caribbean. That's right, I have. Now, I'm still afraid of sharks, but I'm gaining in confidence, right? Because I jumped in and I faced my fear. And someday, I'm gonna do what's pictured here. I'm gonna get in a cage, and I'm gonna not swim with them, but I'm gonna be in the water with a great white shark. I've got to do it. I've got to do it. And now I'm not gonna do it tomorrow or next week, probably not for a year or two at least, maybe 5 or 10, but I am gonna do it. And I got a good friend that lives in South Africa, so I got a place to go and to stay. And I want y'all to hold me to this. Like, y'all wait, y'all give me 5 years. Give me 5 years anyway. And then I want you to look me up. Just Google me. You'll find me. I'll probably still be at TSU. And send me an email and say, Dr. J, have you gotten in the shark cage yet? Right? Because I'm gonna face it, literally right there. Look it in the eyes. But it's baby steps. So how are you gonna do it? I mean, number one, you got to face your fears. Here's some things to keep in mind. Number one, fear, and I've already mentioned this in class, anxiety is a good thing. Nervousness is a good thing because it's a fuel. It's a source of energy. It makes you more dynamic and alert as a public speaker, right? It can help you focus. It increases your energy level and your concentration, right? You ever been walking outside somewhere and you get spooked, but then all of a sudden it's like your vision is it's so much clearer, and your hearing is crisper, and it's like you can hear and see, and it's because of that extra adrenaline that heightens your senses, and that works in your favor as a public speaker. So the goal is control. It's not to eliminate any kind of anxiety about public speaking, but just to be able to control it and to use it, right, to your benefit. So how can I prepare? What are some guidelines? Number one, choose a topic you know a lot about. I mean, if you grew up with a garden and working in the garden and you know a lot about gardening, well, in your process speech, give us a speech on how we can grow our own vegetables. But now keep in mind, some of us live in dorms and things like that, so you might talk about how to have a container garden, how to grow herbs in a window or something like that, so it's more applicable. But you can still relate your own experiences and topics that you know about And that's going to help alleviate some of your anxiety because you're confident in what you're talking about. You've experienced it. You know it, right? You've got stories to tell about it, right? And so that makes you more comfortable talking about it because you're talking about something you know. Prepare yourself thoroughly, all right? Get into the library, whether you physically go on campus into it or virtually through the databases and the search catalogs, and find good resources. Prepare. Knowledge is power. And the more you prepare, right, the more confident you're going to be. Those who are really nervous and anxious before a public speech tend to be those who, you know, put the assignment off to the end, and then they hurriedly tried to put something together at the last minute, and I'll see them come sit in class and they're writing out their note cards in class hurriedly before they go and give their speech, and they've not prepared. And so now they're real nervous about how is it going to work out, and rightly so, because you're not prepared. So the more prepared you are, the more confident you're going to be. Have something worthwhile to say, okay? If you know that what you're talking about matters, that it's important, that it's something that's going to benefit people, then that's going to generate in you more feelings of confidence that, you know, this is a good thing that I'm doing and people need this, and I've got something important to tell them. And you know that you're not wasting their time, and you have more reason to believe that they won't be bored, right? And I mean, if you're giving a speech and you think people are bored, that definitely increases your nervousness and anxiety. And I have a picture here of the famous scientist, Albert Einstein, because there's a famous story that's told where Albert Einstein was once asked to give a speech, and it was an impromptu thing. He didn't attend the event having prepared to speak. And so when he was asked to come up to the stage to give a speech, he got up and he walked up there and he said, "I don't have anything to say." And then he said, "When I do have something to say, I'll say it." And like 6 months later, the story goes that he sent a telegram to the president of Swarthmore College saying, "I now have something to say." And he went back and he gave a speech. But the point is, it's like your grandma may have told you, it's better to keep your mouth shut and be thought a fool than to open your mouth and remove all doubt, right? So have something worthwhile to say. That's going to help reduce your anxiety levels. Don't try to memorize your speech. That's nerve-wracking, to try to memorize it word for word and say it perfectly. Don't try to do that, okay? You're going to use notes. You're going to be able to reference your notes, right? It's extemporaneous speaking that we're doing. And there's a picture here of Sir Winston Churchill, who was the Prime Minister of England, of Great Britain during World War II. And, you know, his speeches that he gave over the radio are you know, credited with keeping the morale of the country up as the German Luftwaffe were bombing nightly, pounding London, right? And he had to give those speeches on the radio and at rallies to try to keep the morale of the people up and get them going into the factories and into the coal mines and all to keep providing for the forces that were fighting and to win the war. And early on in his political career, he went to give a speech, and he had memorized a speech, or so he thought. And when he went up to give a speech, you know, no sooner had he gotten started than he went blank, and he just panicked, and his nerves got the best of him, and he couldn't remember what he was going to say. And because he had tried to memorize it and he didn't have any notes, he sat down in shame. And he said right then and there, he vowed that he would never be in that situation again. He's remembered as one of the greatest statesmen, orators, right? Public speakers of the 20th century. He didn't memorize speeches. You can be a great speaker without memorizing your speeches. Visualize yourself being effective, right? So here, y'all might not have known who Albert Einstein was or Sir Winston Churchill, but you probably recognize right away, this is LeBron. And what's he doing? He's about to knock down the free throw, right? And where are his eyes? His eyes are on the goal. And what is he seeing? He's seeing that ball go into that goal before he even shoots it, right? It's visualizing yourself being successful. You may not believe it now, but I mean, there was a time about, my gosh, how long has it been? Over 20 years ago, 30 years ago, actually, that I was in high school and played basketball. And man, I played a lot of basketball in my youth. And if I had a nickel for every time a coach said to me, look at the goal, not the ball, Jeffress, man, I wouldn't be rich, but I guarantee you I'd have a jar full of nickels, right? It's training you to see the goal and to visualize it, right? So do that as it relates to public speaking. How? Man, just sit there and do some meditation where you visualize yourself, where you're giving your speech, right? In front of an audience and being successful, smiling, being confident, preparing, not preparing, but delivering a speech that you have prepared, and see the audience nodding and engaged, see them clapping, visualize it. And at some point it'll be a reality. I may have mentioned this in class. I know I've mentioned it to at least one of my classes this term, but shyness is not a barrier. Just because you have stage fright or you're an introvert doesn't mean you can't get up on a stage and entertain or give a speech or, you know, be a public figure. And an example of that's Lady Gaga. Early on in her career, she struggled a lot with stage fright. And it's perhaps a large part of the reason why she wore these outlandish dresses and costumes and things, right, that everybody would talk about. And it was part of a mask that she put on that she felt safe, and it gave her security. And it was a way that she coped with stage fright, was by having this kind of as a diversion where people were looking at what she was wearing. She felt less self-conscious about things. And it was just a way that she found that she could manage her stage fright, right, and get out there and perform. And so just because you're shy, right, doesn't mean, or an introvert, doesn't mean that you can't be great on stage. Plan ahead, plan your visuals, make whatever arrangements need to be made to make sure you got the handouts. Don't wait, don't put that off to the last minute. Because if you do, man, that's going to be when the photocopy machine jams, or the internet connection's not working, or you can't find the extension cord, and you start panicking, and that just then snowballs, right? So get all that stuff done early, get it set up, rehearse, and that's going to translate into confidence because, hey, you know, everything's there, it's all in place, it all works, we're ready to go. Mentioned this earlier, positive relabeling, change your self-talk. Again, I'm not nervous, I am excited, okay? Or people are not staring at me, right? People are paying attention, people are listening. So just change your self-talk through positive relabeling, okay? These are all things you can do well in advance of your speech. Immediately before the speech, so we're talking about like within 24 hours, the day before. Number one, get a good night's sleep, be rested up. Your brain will work better. You'll be sharper mentally if you've had a good night's rest. Eat a healthy meal. There's a reason why they call some foods good brain food, because they provide better fuel and help you with clarity. Avoid foods that are high in, you know, processed sugars and stimulants, right? You know, I've had students in the past who feel anxious or worried that, you know, they won't have enough energy or they'll be too nervous, and so they drink like 3 Red Bulls before they give their speech. Well, all that's going to do is exacerbate your nerves. It's going to make you more shaky. It's going to make you more jittery and more, you know, more nervous and all if you have a lot of sugar and stimulants. Also the danger, like, let's say you're going to give a speech at 10 a.m. Well, at 8 a.m., you don't want to eat a breakfast of pancakes smothered in, you know, high sugar syrup and, you know, drink a bunch of orange juice that's very high in sugar, although it's natural, it's still high in sugar. Eat a banana that's very high on the glycemic index, because what that's going to do is it's going to load you up with all this sugar, and then about the time you're ready to give your speech is when you're going to experience that sugar crash, and you're going to be sluggish, right? So eat right, drink right. Physical exercise can help. If you're able, like if you're at home and you're going to be recording your speech at home, well, you know, a couple of hours before you give your speech, do an exercise routine, do some yoga, do some stretching, do some, you know, get on your video game console and do some exercises that way. Like I have a Wii Fit that I get on every now and then go take a shower. And, you know, you've worked off some of that excess anxiety. You've used up some of that adrenaline and fuel through exercising ahead of time. Again, this goes with what I said earlier about verifying that everything works right. You know, you're in this case, your camera, your phone, you've got a PowerPoint, go through that, make sure everything's working right. Get acclimated to the audience and setting. So this is particularly applies if you're going somewhere to give a speech. I always want to arrive early to an event, at least an hour earlier. Sometimes, like if I'm giving a speech like on a Saturday, I might come into town on a Friday, and that afternoon or evening, I try to go by and see the venue ahead of time, certainly that morning before. And that way you get acclimated. It's not, you know, you're not going in giving a speech the first time you've seen this place. So there's nothing that's surprising you. You've seen it before, and it's not going to like give you a jolt or throw you off your game. And also it allows you, when you're there ahead of time, you can mix and mingle some with some of the audience members, and that can help you kind of get relaxed some, because you meet some of them, they're not so threatening. You hear, you know, you overhear some stories or some things that they're talking about that give you some insight into what you can say when you give your speech, and some people that you can relate to and talk to, name drop during your speech. So it's always good to get there early, get acclimated to the audience and setting. You can use relaxation techniques. You know, if you're sitting in a you know, in a room and you're going to be called up to give a speech in about 10 minutes or 15 minutes, and you're sitting there just thinking about it, well, while you're doing that, you know, have your hands in your lap and do some of these like clenched fists and then release. Clench fist, real tight, real tight, real tight. Feel the ache in the joints and feel it cramp up, and then just release. And what you're doing is you're creating pressure outlets, right? Sort of like I have an Instant Pot I like to cook in, and you release the pressure. It's a pressure cooker, and it just goes. Psh. Well, by doing things like this, you're channeling a lot of that anxiety and that nervousness into that spot. And then when you release it, it's just like, it's like the steam being released out of a pressure cooker. And you can Google this and look up different types of relaxation exercises that you can do. During the speech itself, all right, pause a few minutes before starting. If you're walking up to the podium, you know, look down, kind of place your notes a little bit, tell yourself, I'm proud, I am powerful. You know, give yourself some kind of positive mantra to say, and then take a breath and then look up and start. You know, get centered, get focused before you begin. Don't think of it as if you're on a stage performing for an audience, right? You're having a conversation with people, right? When you're just talking to your friends, you're not performing, you're not putting on a show for them, you're talking to them, you're communicating, they're listening to you. Well, a speech is the same thing, it's just on a larger scale where you have more friends that are out there, but you're still just talking to them, you're communicating, and they're listening. You're not putting on a show. This isn't drama, it's not theater, you're not acting, you're talking to people, all right? Know that most of your symptoms of nervousness aren't noticeable, right? They're not seen. You feel the trickle of sweat go down your back. You know that your palms are sweaty. You feel your knee shaking a little bit. The audience doesn't see that, right? So just remember that. Most of your signs of nervousness that you feel, most of those symptoms, the audience will never even know you're having them. So don't draw attention to it, right? Never mention or apologize for being nervous. How many times have I heard students get up and say, oh my God, y'all, y'all bear with me now. This is my first speech. I'm really nervous. Don't say that. All you're doing is causing me to like look at you now and say, oh yeah, you are sweating a little bit, aren't you? You are shaking. Yeah, you are nervous, aren't you? Okay, but really don't apologize or mention that you're nervous, because what happens when you do that, when you're affirming it, you're telling yourself you're nervous. So when you say, y'all, I'm so nervous, okay, not only is the audience listening, but you're listening to yourself on a subconscious level. Your brain says, oh, we're nervous. Okay. Saliva glands dry up. Sweat glands start pouring. Knees start knocking. Okay. Hands start tremoring. So see, don't affirm it. Don't say it. And don't ever apologize again for being nervous. All right. Don't let feedback, right? Nonverbal feedback from listeners upset you. Like you might be up giving a speech and you see someone looking kind of like this, and that's causing you to get self-conscious, and you're like, oh my God, I'm doing terrible. They're not even paying attention. They don't even like this speech, right? Don't focus on those folks that are in the audience. There are always going to be some people in any audience of any size who are like, maybe they had to be there, they're paying a debt to a friend, or their parents made them come or whatever, and they don't want to be there and they're not really interested. That's not who you're talking to. Focus on those who want to be there and who are there, and don't let anyone else get in your head. And also remember, we don't know what that person is thinking, right? And it may not be personal. Again, don't make it about you. This person might be thinking about, you know, their grandpa who is out on the West Coast and is having surgery, right? And she wishes she could be there. It's not about you. It's not about your message, right? So again, don't take that stuff personally. Act poised. This was Michelle Obama a few years back at a Democratic National Convention when she walked out to give a speech, and she was rocking that sleeveless dress, and she walked out there like she owned that stage, right? I don't know how she felt inside. I don't know if she was feeling real nervous about giving that speech. She probably was. She had probably had some nervousness, but when she walked out, like she was walking poised, right? Feelings follow actions. It's easier to act your way into feeling than to feel your way into acting. Don't wait till you feel excited to give the speech, right? Tell yourself, right? Just fake it till you make it, right? Be excited and the feelings will come, all right? And then eliminate excess energy through gestures and movement. That's one of the reasons why I'm encouraging you, you know, if you're recording your speech, which or giving your speech through the camera, which you are in this class, try to stand up. You know, you might be limited in how much you can move, right? Because you got to stay in the frame of the camera, but you can move some. You can give a forceful gesture every now and then, like I'm doing. You can give, like, you know, the tomahawk, you know, the hatchet gesture if you need to. You can do this and you know, do this and that sort of thing. And what that does is not only is it making your speech in some ways more engaging and demonstrative, but it's also, again, a way to help you manage anxiety and nerves, because you're using energy and using up some of that excess adrenaline that's flowing through your system to do these gestures. All right. And that's the end of it. So I hope there have been some things I've shared in here that have helped you, that have given you some courage to believe that, you know, you can face this fear and give that speech with confidence. I'm looking forward to it.